Hello, and welcome to week number 3 of Intro to Theater Online. I am, as always, your professor, Andrew Friedman, and welcome back for week number 3. In this week, we are going to be focusing on directors, actors, and also producers. So for this week, you'll have a lot of work to do. Chapter 6, Chapter 9, reading Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman. You have a quiz number 3, a discussion number 3, and also an acting assignment. So please make sure that you are completing all of that work. Directions for that work are available on the Blackboard page. And of course, if you have any questions along the way, please do not hesitate to contact me. So last week, we focused on plays and playwriting. And this week, we are going to move in a slightly different direction, but following a same kind of line of thought, and focus on directors, actors, and producers. So this week, we're thinking about the jobs within the theater. Right? If in the first week we were thinking a lot about performance, and if in the second week we were thinking a lot about text, and here in the third week we're thinking about who does these things, who's responsible for these things, and how do they make themselves manifest into a theatrical performance. So today we're thinking a lot about the jobs of the theater. One thing I would encourage you to keep in mind when you are reading the chapters for this week is that while we will get definitions of what a director or an actor or a producer does, those jobs are as varied and different as each individual theatrical production, right? We might think about this in terms of something that you may encounter all the time in your daily lives, wherever you may have a part-time job or a part-time or full-time responsibility. You may work at a store, and there may be someone at that store whose job is to be the store manager, right? And that person's responsibility at, say, the Gap is going to be quite different than, say, the store manager of the Mac store, right? Because they are dealing with different types of customers, they are dealing with different types of questions, and the different needs of their employees and the product that they're selling, whether it's clothing or technology, right? And theatrical production is as varied and different than, say, a Gap store and a Mac store. So when you're reading about directors, keep in mind there are many ways in which that job operates. You'll see that there are some directors who come in and have a somewhat traditional approach to a production in which their job is to oversee the entire artistic process. And this is one way of thinking about the director's job. The director is a person who is the chief artistic collaborator. The chief artistic collaborator, meaning that the director is responsible for organizing and facilitating the work of lighting designers, set designers, costume designers, the actors, perhaps a dramaturg, perhaps a playwright, perhaps a choreographer. The buck stops with the director in this type of situation. They are in charge of overseeing the entire production. Now, there are directors that do this in various types of ways. There are more collaboratively minded directors who say, okay, scenic designer, you've got cool style, you've got interesting ideas, this is what we're interested in, go and make something and bring it to me. There are also directors who will say, I want my production to look like this, I need this to happen, and I need that to happen. So while ultimately a director's job is to oversee the entire production, how they do that is quite varied. Some people give their artistic collaborators lots of freedom, some of them give them no freedom at all, and many of them are in between the two. And that choice about how to collaborate will oftentimes be determined by what type of production is being made. Okay? And that brings us to our other two jobs that we're thinking about this week. The second one, which is perhaps the easier one, is the producer. Producers traditionally are the people who find, secure, and allocate financing, i.e., money, for the production, right? The producer goes out and finds people that want to help produce a show on Broadway or a show off Broadway or a touring production of The Lion King on a cruise. And this person's responsibility would be to find the finances, the money necessary to make the production work. This is the money person. Now, sometimes, just like the director has some variability, there are oftentimes producers who have creative input or creative control in the process too. Because oftentimes these people who are producers know a lot about the art form besides how to get money to make it happen. So that role can be quite varied. There are producers who just go and find money. There are producers who have more of an active role in the artistic process, making decisions perhaps about casting or who they're going to get to direct the production or what production they might be producing in the first place. So that's also quite varied. The third component of this that you'll look at this week, and the one that you're probably the most familiar with, are the actors, right? And while we might think that we know quite clearly what an actor does, hopefully through the course of this reading, we'll see that acting is an artistic contribution that is as varied as the director's contribution or the producer's contribution. And while ultimately the actor's responsibility is usually to stand up there on stage and deliver the performance that they've been allocated, how they get to that point can be quite varied. We oftentimes hear stories in Hollywood of so-called method actors, right? Daniel Day-Lewis would be a good example of this, right? Someone who fully inhabits their character. I'm going to walk around and pretend that I really live in the 19th century for the whole time we are making this because I don't want to break character. Myself and the character are going to become one. But that's just one possible strategy to approaching a role. Oftentimes there are actors that work in both theater and film and other mediums that help write some of the dialogue or lines. There are some that just show up and memorize the lines and perform them as they are. So as we're seeing with these jobs, the director, the producer, and now the actor, is that what the actual artistic project is, what the show that they want to put on is, will help determine how these people fulfill their roles in that process. So in summary, all that is to say is there is not one definitive way of being any one of these people. There's a great deal of variety, and that variety is determined by the needs of a particular production. One other thing that will come up in this chapter with regards to acting are two different general styles of performance or acting. One of those being representational, here it is, there it is, and presentational, okay? Representational and presentational. And one of the perhaps easier ways to kind of understand the difference between the two is that in representational acting, the performers typically do not pay attention to the audience. That is to say, they really pretend and act as if they are existing in an alternate world that is not related to the audience that's watching. One of the ways that they've thought about this throughout theater history is that they're performing behind a fourth wall, right? That is to say, here I am, I'm in my own walled off room over here, right? And I have no awareness of you as the audience, right? I am really the person I'm pretending to be, right? I don't acknowledge the fact that we are in a theatrical setting. That is largely thought to be representational acting, right? I am representing my character. The other form, presentational acting, more clearly acknowledges the audience and the theatrical setting, right? That is to say, they wink at, acknowledge, or flat out call out the fact that we are in a theater and I am doing this thing for you, the audience, right? So right now I'm being incredibly presentational. I'm speaking directly to you. I'm explaining what this is. I'm not fully pretending to be someone else. I'm not sealed behind that fourth wall. And this is one of the big distinctions between the two, representational and presentational. So as you go through this chapter, I want you to be keeping a tab on the different jobs and different responsibilities within the theater, but also how those might lead to different types of theater production, how our involvement, degree of involvement, and the responsibilities that we're given would result in different types of theater being made. And one last thing before I go, this being week 3 means that next week is already the midterm, right? We are on an accelerated track. This is going to go quite quickly. So I will just say right now that if you have not selected the first theater performance that you will be seeing for this semester, you need to get on that yesterday. If you have not gotten permission from me for the show that you would like to see, you need to have emailed me yesterday because no late assignments will be accepted for this course. So please make sure that you are making those choices, finding time to see the production so that you can get that assignment done on time. Secondly, I should say, in thinking about the midterm coming up in a few weeks, that will be comprehensive for the first half of this semester. I think that's all for this week. So again, if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. Otherwise, good luck, good reading, and keep in mind while you're reading Death of a Salesman that play directly relates to your acting assignment, right? So you may want to read that acting assignment before you start reading the play. And therefore, you can start to read the play thinking about how to complete that assignment. That's all for this, week number 3. Actors, directors, and the producer. I hope that you have a good week, and I will speak to you again soon. Goodbye.